This land is mine. God gave this land to me. This brave, this golden land to me. And when the morning...
Today is Sunday, March 20th, 2022. A beautiful day on the island of Nassau, Bahamas. The sky is blue, the birds are singing, there's a cool breeze, it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm in paradise. Today I thought I would spend some time with my Aunt Rosie Rollins, my mother's youngest sister, in an area where my mother, the late Orville Rollins Gibson, grew up. This is Hospital Lane. This area, as most Nassauians would know, is adjacent to and just below the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas, which is housed in the Villa Doyle, a mansion built in the 1860s as the home to the first Chief Justice in the Bahamas. While my mother was a child, the home was occupied by Sir Walter K. Moore, a Bahamian merchant who was the largest exporter of Bahamian sisal, hemp, and marine products, tortoise and seashells. He was also a politician and president of the Legislative Council. My mother and her parents and siblings, who lived just below the Villa Doyle, in a stucco home in a dirt yard, had no vehicle. In fact, there were very few cars back in the 30s and 40s. People who had vehicles usually rode bicycles, so my mom and her family walked this lane for decades. They didn't have much, but they believed and trusted in God, never went to bed hungry, always had clothes to wear, and my grandmother with so many of those clothes, and they always had shoes on their feet. So let us take a walk down memory lane with my Aunt Rosie. I will call this short documentary Just Below the Villa Doyle.
To make this land our own until I die. This land is mine.
And here is my aunt that can tell me a little bit about the history of this property and my mother and their family who lived here. Can you give me your name, please?
I'm Rosie, born as Rosamond May Rollins, and July 10th, 1940.
So how old does that make you?
Makes me 81, and I'll be 82 this year.
Wow, couldn't tell by looking. Who were your parents?
My parents was Hastings Harold Rollins of Bimini and Floyd Louise Wood, who was born in Lower Bogey, Lutheran.
Okay, how were you related to my mother, the late Orville Rollins Gibson?
She was my big sister. And let's see, she would be the third child of my parents.
Okay, how many children did your parents have?
7 children, they raised 6.
And what were their names?
Phyllis was the baby who passed away after 6 days. Lester Rollins, Maxwell Rollins, Orville, Lorraine Rollins, Gibson, and Ruth Eloise Henry, Rollins Henry in fact, and Hugh Edmund Rollins.
Okay. So this area is where you grew up? Is this where you all lived growing
Yes,
up?
I was born on that property behind this house.
Okay, let's start with this house. Whose house was this?
This
When you
house-
were growing up, who lived
When
there?
I was growing up, Ivy Wallace Roberts and her husband, Fred Roberts, lived in this house. This property was leased from my grandparents, William and Mamie Antonio, and it was done by their oldest son, whose name was Reginald Antonio.
Okay. When you came home or walked into this property, how did you get to your house?
There was an alley alongside this house, about the width of a Volkswagen, and it came up to the entrance to the property.
Okay, can we take a walk? Is this the same alley?
Yeah, this is the same alley. The same alley, and it had a low wall alongside with floral trees alongside it, and it came up to the end here. Now this wall was not here. It was like a rock formation formed here, and this was the entrance into the property. And we came up alongside. That structure over there is a well. And that well was there for my great-grandparents who are alive.
So is that how you got water?
No, that wasn't used. That was closed because children were in the yard and they didn't want any small children to fall in because it's a very deep well.
Okay, how did you get water?
The government supplied us with faucets.
Okay.
There was one over on Petticoat Lane and one down the street toward the end opposite the Ingram property.
So you collected water in buckets from those?
We brought water in buckets home, and we collected it in large cisterns in the house area.
Okay, I see there's a huge mansion behind all of this property. I believe it was Villa
Doyle.
way behind those trees. And that is now the National Art Museum, the Bahamas National Art Museum.
Right.
So was that house there when you were growing up?
Oh yes, had many beautiful memories of that, all the activities in that house. So Walter K. Moore was the person who had bought it from the previous owners, and as a matter of fact, his name was the first name on any money that we had here in the Bahamas, the 4-shilling note.
Okay.
They would have many parties upstairs in the ballroom.
Did you ever have an opportunity to speak to Sir Walter K. Moore?
I never in my lifetime spoke to him, but of course I could hear him bellowing when he had a drink or two. And he would throw his wife's slippers over the wall sometime, and my Grammy would sometime pick him up and beckon to her when she passed by to get her car from the garage in the back end here.
Okay. Can you describe what your house looked like?
Oh, the house was a stucco house.
What is stucco? What does that mean?
It's like he built a wooden house and he put like a chicken coop wire on it, and then you add cement to it and cover the whole thing over.
Okay. So how many rooms did the house have?
The house had 5 rooms. I did a little sketch as I was thinking about it earlier. It had 3 bedrooms, a front room, and a kitchen. And I don't know. Yeah. So the 2 bedrooms were on either end of the oblong structure. And the front room was in the middle. The living room had the dining room and everything.
Okay.
And of course, in those days, we had outhouses. Most everybody's home in this vicinity had an outhouse, with the exception of some of the homes on the main highway out there. Well, unfortunately, there was a fire after my aunt purchased the property, but when my father went to the United States in 1959, he had the option to buy the property, but he opted not to do that. He said he was going to the U.S. So my aunt, she bought the property from our uncle, granduncle.
Which aunt was that?
Aunt Margie,
Okay.
Marge Guillaume. She bought it from Uncle William Antonio. And it seemed to have like a higher. The ground wasn't as low as it is now. The house seemed to be a little bit higher, and there was a wall around a garden. And you had steps right over some of the original steps, and they're still there, where you walk up past the well to go up to the porch. It had a porch to go into the house.
All right. Did you ever actually go in the yard where the Villa Doyle was?
As children, we scaled the wall at the back and went in there to talk to the gardener many times. And that was probably the only time we had gone there in their lifetime.
I noticed there's a fence there now. Was that fence there when you were growing up?
That fence was not there. That was put there recently.
Okay, so what was it, a wall?
It's just a rock wall like you see the bottom is. We could walk over into this yard we call Fisher Hill.
Okay.
And we played over there. And many times people like Mrs. Ingram, who had horses, they would bring the horse, get permission from us to bring the horse through the yard, and they'd carry it over there so the horse could feed on the grass during the day.
All right.
Yeah.
I see a tree over in the distance. That tall tree, it looks like a sapodilla tree.
Yes.
Was that tree there as a child?
Yes, all my life, and that was there since my grandmother and great-grandmother were little
Wow.
girls.
So how old do you think that tree is?
Over a couple hundred years, maybe.
Wow. I didn't realize the sapodilla tree could last that long.
right.
So it's over. I wonder if it's still bearing.
It's still bare, but not as much as it used to.
Was it that large when you were growing up?
It was about as tall, but it was bushier.
I remember there was a tamarind tree in the yard. As a child, I used to like to eat tamarinds, and Mommy would often come and get some for me, or she'll bring me and we'll get some off the tree.
Yes.
I guess that tree has since been removed.
Yes, that's been removed. I think a hurricane might have taken it down. We call that Uncle Huey's tamarind tree. It had sweet tamarinds.
Okay.
It was like outside the door of the property, the house. Near area we used to have a vegetable garden somewhere beyond where that coconut tree is. And it had very sweet tamarinds.
So you mentioned that there was no running water in the house and there was no inside toilet because everybody had outdoor
Right.
toilets at the time. So what about electricity?
Yes, we had electricity. But
In the
water didn't come.
1940s?
Yeah, water didn't come until about, say, 1956.
Okay. So you had light before you had water?
We had light before we had water. Right.
So was the electricity there in the 20s, like to 1928 when my mother was there?
I don't know. At that time, she might have been in the property in Chippenham because
Okay.
they hadn't come up this way yet. I think they came up around 1939.
Okay. Like
Because-
just before you were born?
Exactly. Because when my mother married my father, they lived in a place they called the Pond out east, not far from where Samilo Butler's property is.
Okay.
His shop and the Bethel funeral home
Okay.
in that neighborhood.
Do you remember much about the political climate back then? I suppose the UBP was in power.
UBP was in power.
Okay. Do you remember any sort of prejudiced or unfortunate instances, anything that would have happened that was not something that you would have been happy about as a black Bahamian?
No, I couldn't say that I have ever had any discrimination. And I feel like there might have been people who, because they wanted to go in the restaurants downtown and they say they couldn't go because of their color. I think
But wouldn't that have been discrimination?
it was discrimination.
Okay.
But that was discrimination, of
So
course.
would that be like the only type of discrimination, just not being able to
That's the only thing I
that
remember.
you witnessed?
That's the only thing I could remember.
Well, you know, I must say that my mother never indicated to me that she herself had
Yes.
had any severe discrimination to the
Exactly.
point where she actually had an extremely good relationship with whites.
Right.
She never ever showed us any kind of negative behavior or attitude toward
Right.
them, and she never appeared to feel like she was any less than they
That's
were.
right.
In fact, she taught me
Yes.
that I was strong, that I was a human. It didn't matter the color of my skin. We would listen to records by Martin Luther King all the time, and I just
Exactly.
never saw the issue of color, at least
Exactly.
not in my time.
Exactly.
Now, of course, everybody's different.
That's true.
And I do believe that everybody's circumstance is different. But being brought up in a Christian home where we knew who we were,
Yes.
we were children of the King.
Yes.
And maybe the prejudice was there, but it just passed us by. That's all I could
We
say.
didn't pay any attention to any nonsense because
Right.
look, we went to school with white people.
Right.
There were more white people in my class when I was going to school at Bahamas Academy than my own color.
So
And
where
we were
was
all-
where
all
was
treated properly?
where was Bahamas Academy back
Now, in those days, they didn't call it Bahamas Academy. It was parochial school on what you call Hawkins Hill or Mount Royal Avenue at the top of the hill. They bought a property where a woman named Miss Lawrence taught school for the church. And people from everywhere, white and all the church members, they went to school there. And when we built a school down on Wolf Road and named it Bahamas Academy, that's when they followed. All the Hunky Joes and everybody came down, and most of my classmates were Hunky Joes, and
Okay.
those were my friends, and they didn't treat me funny.
then? You know, I didn't realize until recently that the word Conky Joe was not something that white Bahamians actually like.
They don't particularly like it. No.
But I think
But
black
I-
Bahamians use the term without any
Without
negative
any- we don't have any negative
connotation.
feelings
It's just
about
the
it.
way we use to describe white
Yes,
Bahamians.
exactly.
But of course, since I learned that it's kind of distasteful to them, I
Yes,
generally
so
try
I
not to
refuse
use
to
it.
do it,
You're
right.
White Bahamians,
But
right.
during the time English people were in this country, they never made us feel not that we weren't special.
Really?
Never had any problems with any English people here.
But
Who-
again, you couldn't go into certain stores, right?
Oh, you can
I-
go in there, but it's just that certain types of people and the way you presented yourself, they didn't want you
So
in
it
there.
just depended on who the person
exactly
was.
who the person was
And how
why
they
you
looked
come in.
and what they expected. Because
Exactly.
sometimes people treat you
That's
the way
right.
you expect
That's
to
right.
be treated.
That's
right.
true. And it's quite so. And let me give you a little example. After my father moved in 1959 to Florida, thinking that they had the same carefree, open attitude, I walked down on Flagler Street and went on Biscayne and went through the front door of this place that was selling ice cream. And I smiled and said, "Can I have an ice cream cone with such and such a flavor?" And he looked at me and his mouth fell open. Well, being a girl as young as I was, I thought, oh, maybe he think I'm gorgeous or something because I was dressed nicely.
Uh-huh.
I sat down and he still wasn't making a move to get my cone. So I said, "Did you hear me? I'd like to have," and I repeated.
Hello.
And I sat, and he said, "But you can't sit there." And I said, "Why can't I sit here? And I'm only ordering a cone." And he went and he got the cone because when he heard my voice, he realized this girl is not an American.
Yes.
He brought me the cone, I paid him, and I say thank you, and I just sashayed out of the place.
Yes.
And when I got home, my father said, "I heard you went walking today." I said, "Yes, Daddy." I said, "I really don't like this place. I don't know why." After I told him the story, he said, "But you couldn't go in there. You can't go through the front door. You can't sit down." I said, "Well, why would you want to come to a place like
Hello.
this?" So that really ticked me off.
Right.
I had left a better place
There you go.
than I went.
Right.
He took us to. That's right.
Yeah, so it's really interesting the difference in the mentality. But again, there are Bahamians who claim that they were prejudiced against. Maybe we just didn't take it on. Okay, so I noticed this walkway that we came through was a very narrow one, and I imagine it must have been really dark at nights in this area. Did you all have issues with crime back then?
No.
None whatsoever. Like you weren't afraid
The only
to come
thing
through
I
there in the night?
remember was one night there was no gates were locked. We just locked the doors. One night, Mother heard a noise, or there was some noise going on, and Mother said, "Max, is that you?" Because we had a brother who was socialite, and he used to like to be coming in all kind of crazy hours, disobeying what she had wanted him to do. And as he came in, he saw a man coming from our backyard. And Max chased the man because he was like trying to see whether the door was open so he could get in. Only theft was like a thing a person would think of doing in those days. And he chased the fella out. I go, blow your brains out. And he said those crazy things just to make the guy afraid. And mother screamed from her bed, Max, Max, don't do that. He had no gun.
Right.
But long story short, that was a guy who worked for some neighbors down the street. We knew who he was. I won't call his name. And he had a tendency to come around peeping in the night. And if he could steal anything, well, of course, that's what he was interested in.
Right.
That's the only kind of sort of crimes we ever had.
Okay. All right. As far as the buildings are concerned, you said that this house was here when you were a child.
Yes.
That
They
would
got
have been
married
more
when I
than
was
80
born.
years ago. Okay.
Yes.
What about the building on the right? Was this here?
This building was not here as a child.
Okay.
This property is the Mrs. Horton and her mother who went to New York. And this was the property filled with bamboo.
Okay.
First time I'd seen bamboo grow in profusion. It was on this property. Miss Austin and her grandson, Sparkman.
Okay.
He was a playmate.
So what about coming out here now, coming out to the property? Let me see which homes were here. What was across the street? Was that building?
Across the street was an empty lot. It had lots of pear trees on it.
Okay, so that was
And that
not
was
there.
later bought by Mr. Strong, whose son is the owner of the property now.
So what about the yellow house down the
Yellow
street?
House
Was
is
that
one
there?
of the oldest buildings in the neighborhood. That was owned by our Aunt Rebecca. She married a Mr. Brennan. There were 4 sisters. Her oldest sister lived just back of her a bit. And we used to call her Aunt Sissy. They said it because they couldn't say sister as a child.
Okay.
And she had 2 other, she was a twin, Aunt Rebecca. Her twin was Martha. And another sister named Linda,
Right.
Linda Taylor, who lived down on West Street on the corner on Meeting Street. And they were family members who came from the Eleuthera line.
Okay. Okay, you didn't have transportation in those days, did you?
No.
So if you wanted to go to church any morning,
Yeah.
you would come down the alley, and where would you go to get to church?
We would make a left up
Oh,
the
okay,
hill.
you went up the hill. The church.
The church was on Shirley Street.
Okay.
And we'd go all the way down this street, West Hill Street, out in front of Government House, Princess Street, then Frederick Street, then Shirley Street. We'd walk all the way up, almost until you get to St. Matthew's.
How long did that take? I guess y'all walk fast in those days too.
Well, we had a good, healthy walk. I think it might have taken a little bit less than 1 hour, maybe.
Okay. So,
There's nothing to prevent you, no traffic.
okay. What was in? Didn't I guess not that many people had cars.
Sorry?
I guess not that many people had cars.
Hardly any cars.
Okay.
People had a few bicycles.
Okay.
Practically everybody walked.
Okay. So, in your neighborhood, was there a mixture of cultures, or was it mainly black people?
In my neighborhood at that time, there were more, I think it was sort of equal. The white people had been clearing off at that time. We had the O'Brien family, and we called that old gentleman Uncle Bobby. He was a very beautiful Caucasian man, and he took in a family of people out of Eleuthera, the Culmers, who lived in his home, and then there was my great-grandparents, of course. They were half Irish, and there was another family, I can't quite remember who they were, but by this time the Caucasian families had decreased greatly in the neighborhood.
Okay, so this street right here that we're standing on, this is what's the name of this one?
This is Hospital
This
Lane.
is Hospital Lane.
Hospital Lane North.
Okay, this is Hospital Lane North. I think I might have said Petticoat Lane at some point,
No.
but that would be let me
Petticoat
just
would
see
be the
where
next corner.
Petticoat Lane would be further down here.
The first corner from this house, the property.
We have some unique names for for streets in Nassau. Okay.
And to the left is Pigtail.
Where? Oh, that's where?
That's Pigtail Alley.
Oh, I didn't know that was an alley. So where does that go?
That goes out to Blue Hill Road.
Oh, I never knew that.
Uh-huh. That's where the Roberts family lived, down through there.
So this is Pigtail Alley, but it looked blocked off.
Yeah, it used to have a wall, because this used to be, there's a stump here, and this piece was where you walked on it.
Okay.
Since then they made a road like way. Cousin Bursell lived in a house on this property right here. And beyond that, the Morrows lived down toward the corner.
Okay, and so that would be Pigtail Alley, which I've heard my mother talk about for a long time.
Pigtail.
And then this one here was Petticoat Lane.
Petticoat Lane, that's right. On the corner here was a big, beautiful house. Mrs. Marty Strawn used to live here. She was a beautician.
Okay.
She used to do my hair when I was a child.
So there was a building right here on the corner?
Right,
Okay.
Nice house.
So what about the building that's dilapidated there? Was that there?
That building dilapidated, like a stone building. Dr. Cleveland Aeneas used to live in there when he came back from the U.S. and had married his wife, brought her back home, and their small children, they lived there. Fritzy, Judson, and Greta, I don't think she was born yet.
Okay. All right. So that looks like, I think that's a lodge hall over there to the left.
Yes, over to the left.
Was that there?
Is the lodge hall. That was built since I was born. That was the property where the Benjamins, Crispin Benjamin, lived, and his family. They had a lot of small children. They were lovely people.
Okay. I remember there was a store at the very end of the corner where my aunt used to buy soda. She used to love buying sodas from there.
Oh yeah.
That store is no longer there anymore, right?
That store was owned by Mr. Fred Allen, Dr. David Allen's father.
Okay.
He would sometimes come down and help his parents in the store. And about this time, Dawn, the youngest child, might have been just a baby. But George, the older brother, he was the one who was in the store most of the time, and the parents weren't there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And it was a nice place to go to purchase anything you needed that you didn't get. As a rule, people would buy things as they needed. So that's how it went.
I guess you didn't have refrigerator.
No, we had what you call an ice box, which my father made. And every Sunday, Samilo Butler's son, before he became Samilo, his son would come in a big truck and inquire as to how many blocks of ice you want, and he would take it to each home. It was really interesting, and it kept everything cool and kept everything
For
good.
a whole week?
For as long, yeah, the ice lasted long.
Oh,
And
wow.
it maybe up till, say, you bought it on Sunday, the ice was still there until about Wednesday or
That
Thursday.
must have been a doggone it good ice box.
And yeah.
I
it was
guess they don't make them
insulated.
like they used to.
It was insulated properly.
Okay.
And you put sometimes what you call it? Sometimes they would put what's those, like a gunny sack or something on it to keep it, and it
Okay.
lasted.
So what type of foods did you all eat on a regular basis?
On a regular basis, we eat the Bahamian things. Well, my mother became a vegetarian after a certain point in time, so she ate mostly vegetables. And
So she became a vegetarian from the time you all were down here?
Oh yeah, she was a vegetarian for about 60-something years.
Wow.
We ate the peas and rice thing on the Sunday with maybe like potato salad, the usually Bahamian thing. But my mother always believed you must have something like carrot salad, which was grated carrots with raisins in it, and or lettuce and tomatoes, and any of the vegetables you have growing in the yard, the pumpkin, sweet potato, or whatever. Those were the things. But we ate also a lot of fish.
Right.
And then chicken was better in those days, so people would buy chicken and fix it and eat it, and
Okay.
bake it, and it was quite nice.
Okay, so what would you say were some of your fondest memories of living in Hospital Lane?
My fondest memories was the beauty of having your family, my cousins who lived in the yard with me. We played together. I mean, it was enough of them. We didn't have to go out finding company outside. We played in the yard, and in the yard we had every imaginable fruit tree you could imagine. We had a great big plum tree that was there from my great-grandmother was a little girl.
Plum tree as in scarlet or hog?
A hog, not hog plum, what you call hog, the
The-
yellow ones.
That's hog, yeah.
Hog plum, and it grew up, and in the 1926 hurricane it fell, but it shot up again, and it made a big cycle in the yard so that it was a bigger tree than it would ordinarily be because of how it fell and how it grew up again.
Right.
And it had lots of plums on it. We could go sit underneath it, and many times we didn't want to eat in the house. We'd come take our dinner and spread out something and sit down underneath the tree and eat lunch. And that was beautiful. I enjoyed being home with everybody and enjoying everything. But I wasn't a big eater, so my mother found a secret. Let's go to the beach.
So yeah, y'all went to the beach a lot,
My
right?
mother would take us to the beach. We'd take most of the neighborhood children who wanted to go. The Roberts family, they would be along. And we'd go down and stop to the Bow family. Their father was the only Caucasian on the fire department that I could ever remember. The history of that. Their sisters were Betty, Sally, and Joyce. If they wanted to go, they would connect with us too, and we'd all go down at Long Wharf,
Right.
and we'd have a lovely time down there. That was really enjoyable, and that's where I learned to get my appetite going. I would eat when I'm out at a picnic.
So Long Wharf was the beach that you went to?
Yes, right down opposite the police station there on the A Street. That was the only main up-to-date beach, and it was nice
That you could walk to?
that you could, and then sometimes we'd walk down further to where they have what they call Arawaki, but that was not as fashionable as that spot at Long Wharf.
Right.
All the Diaguilas, all the Mosses, they would all come out and be enjoying the beach down there as well.
Excellent. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, I remember once Pedro and his brother Anthony. Unfortunately, Anthony broke his toe on the gate opposite Nassau Street. He was lifting it up. It was something to keep the waters from flooding out, I think. And somehow he got his toe broken on that when we made one trip there. And their sister Sylvia
Right.
and Rosie, my namesake,
Right.
who is now Rosie Williams. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I thank you so much for this interview. If I think of anything else, I will definitely ask and try and put something together so that we can have a little taste of your life's history. And as I think about my mother and the years she lived in this area, I just feel so much at home. I feel almost as if I was there. And I'd like to remember this for years to come.
Make this land our home. If I must fight, I'll fight to make this land our own. Until I die, this land is mine.